Hey guys, Maniac here at GameAccess.net. Doing another Tales from IT. This is a second part of a two-part video retrospective where I'm talking about one particular issue or two particular issues with Mac data recovery. Now, if you haven't seen my previous part, I'll just... well, first off, you can go back in the playlist and look at it, but if you don't want to or you just need a little bit of a refresher, here it is. My girlfriend has a Mac. She is a Mac user. She primarily uses Macs. And they break. Go figure. At a time, they break. And the issue isn't the Mac breaking. The issue is, well, what to do with the data? Can we recover the data? And previously, I've had to replace her hard drive on her computer. And I was able to do a hard drive replacement and do a full data recovery. However, 3 years later, after replacing her hard drive once, her new hard drive broke again. So at that point, well, the computer's obsolete. There's really not too much point in trying to fix it or keep it maintained because it's just as likely that other components were broken in the computer as well. Her battery was still on its way out. Her RAM was in bad shape. It needed to be upgraded. Her RAM capacity was obsolete. It would have needed to be replaced anyway, just because of how obsolete it was. Her touchpad was completely broken. So at this point, we were talking about getting her a new system. And we had to get Mac because Mac data can only be recovered to other Macs. PC data can be recovered to Macs, but Mac data is it's the file system. It's completely incompatible with the Windows operating system. Now, I know you Linux users are probably saying, well, I can read this file system or I can read this file system. Fine. Maybe Linux can read these file systems. But I can tell you this, Windows can't. And so it got to a point where we had to do a data recovery for a now broken computer to a new one. Now, my girlfriend's been really interested in the new iMac models. She was really excited about these. My sister recently got one. She upgraded from her MacBook Pro to an iMac. She's been happy with her new iMac, with the exception of the fact that some of her older programs couldn't work on it. That's neither here nor there. That happens. So, what are we going to do here? Well, at this point, my girlfriend was very much against me taking apart her old computer. She didn't want me to do that. I had to take apart her old one and replace the broken hard drive. Now the hard drive was broken again, but she still thought that it wasn't worth taking apart and making a whole mess about it. So she was interested in other ways that I could do data recovery from an old Mac to a new one. Well, first off, my girlfriend had not the most recent backups, but she did have recent enough backups. She had backups that were about a month or two old, which still contained most of her programs, most of her documents, most of her workspace files, and in her iCloud and iTunes data, basically. So she was so at the very least, she didn't have the most up-to-date backups, but she did have backups. There were backups, and they could be used. Now, Apple has a program in it. It's been in the Mac operating system for quite a long time. It's called the Migration Assistant, Apple Migration Assistant, or something along those lines. You'll find it's in the Utilities folder of the Applications folder. So if you do this, I think it's like Command A to load up your Applications folder, or they'll probably just be in your dock. You look under Utilities in the Utilities folder, and you'll find the Migration Assistant. Only use the Migration Assistant if you're using a new Mac that needs to load data from an old Mac. Now, the Migration Assistant works in 3 ways. Or if you're German, 3 ways. The first way is you can do a direct data transfer from a working Mac, an older working Mac, to a new working Mac using either the Ethernet connection, whether it be a network, like if they're both on the same network, basically, or using legacy FireWire, or more recently, Thunderbolt ports. The Thunderbolt port in an older MacBook Pro is perfect for fast peer-to-peer data transfer. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, well, my FireWire port, my Mac is newer. I don't have a FireWire port on my Mac. And if you do have a newer Mac, you're right. You won't have a FireWire port. We'll get to that as we continue on. We'll move on. Hold that thought, if you will. Or the other option is to use a Time Machine backup. If you already have a intact Time Machine backup on an external drive, you can load that into into the Migration Assistant and use that. Now, that's the method that we used, at least at first. I told my girlfriend I did not want to recover her data or to do a data transfer from the broken Mac, because after going through the Mac bit by bit in disk management, I could see that her old MacBook Pro's laptop was completely corrupted. The hard drive was screwed up beyond repair. Disk management confirmed it. I tried to repair it, and I got an error within like 5 or 6 seconds. That usually tells me that there's a hardware failure in that laptop. Also, it wouldn't boot. So there was that too. It was pretty screwed up. So loading data and doing recent backups from that old laptop was not an option. But we did have intact older backups that were not corrupted. So we were going to go with those. So first thing you want to do is when you get a new iMac or a Mac or a MacBook or whatever, you turn it on, you go through the initial installation phase, initial setup. You do not need to sign into iCloud, at least not right then and there. But the thing you do want to do is you want to make sure that it's installed the most recent version of the Mac operating system. Right now, as of the time of this being recorded, it's 10.13.1. That's the most recent version. I think the code name for it is called High Sierra, if I remember correctly. But make sure that that operating system is installed on whatever Mac that you're using. If you can't get the most recent version of Mac OS on your target computer, don't use it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Mac data on newer system, on older systems can't be recovered to, Mac data on newer systems can't be recovered to older systems. They just can't. The file systems are incompatible. They're using new file systems with the new operating system. So don't attempt to recover newer data from a newer machine to an older machine. Just don't do it. Secondly, so what you want to do is you want to connect your drive, your backup Time Machine drive. Do not turn on Time Machine. If you're using a Time Machine drive or a drive that has a Time Machine partition from an older system or from a different system, for the love of God, do not, once you insert the drive into the new Mac, do not turn on Time Machine. Do not run Time Machine. Do not turn on Time Machine. Treat the drive as if it's just that, an external drive, at least for right now. Make sure that the drive shows up in Finder and everything, and so make sure that you can see the drive so that you know the drive is still intact. But for the love of God, don't turn Time Machine on. Leave Time Machine off, disable it, whatever. Open the Applications folder once you have the most recent version of Mac OS installed. Open the Applications folder. Open the Utilities folder inside the Applications folder and run the Migration Assistant. The system will then close out everything and it will start running the Migration Assistant. The Time Machine drive should be connected at this point. You want to say recover data from a Time Machine. It will show you then if it can detect the Time Machine the Time Machine backup. It will say where the drive is and it will tell you what the most recent backup was. That's going to be the version that you're going to use. That's going to be the backup that you're going to recover. Tell it yes, and trust me, tell it to recover everything. Delete what you don't want later on. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now. This is going to take a while. Even if you're using a USB 3 drive on a USB 3 port, I was getting speeds of maxing out about 56 megabits. 56 megabits a second. I was trying to recover over 400 gigs of data, and, well, it took 4 hours to do that. So your mileage may vary depending upon how fast your backup drive is, but that's just how long it took me. It's going to recover all the files one by one, program documents, program files. No passwords are recovered, nor are serial numbers recovered as well. You're going to have to put back in, if you have Creative Suite installed, you're going to need to dust off your old serial number and put that back in. Because while it will install the Creative Suite 6 if you have it previously installed on the Time Machine drive. If it's being transferred to a new machine, data migration will not transfer over the serial key. You'll have to re-put in the serial key. Your documents will transfer over, all your files and everything else. So even if you have compatibility issues with older programs, your files and documents will certainly transfer over in intact things. You can either try to find newer versions of the programs that you were using to run those documents, or try to patch your programs to make them compatible with the new operating systems. Whatever. You have options, basically. So 4 hours later, I get a whole bunch of error messages saying I can't run the older Hewlett-Packard driver. I can't run the older pen tablet driver. So I'm just keep clicking OK. You may get a lot of pop-ups of that, especially towards the end of the data migration. And you may get a big error saying I can't run one program or another, basically. But for the most part, you'll probably be able to run most of the stuff that you have installed in the computer. Then what you need to do is load your profile, load your earlier system profile, and start testing everything. Test all your programs, test your files, start running the App Store to make sure that all your software is up to date. Change your background image because in all likelihood your background image was made for a 2K screen and now you're using a 4K screen, so you want to make sure that you have a background image that isn't blurry. So do that. But for the most part, this will do a recovery. You will get errors if you locked any files. If you locked any files to make them write-only or write-protected, you won't be able to unlock them. I haven't found a way around that. My sister, for some reason, locked some really obnoxious photos on her desktop, and she just thought, oh, I'll just unlock them or something. But she backed up the computer while the files were locked. When I attempted to do a data migration on those files, I couldn't unlock them. I kept getting a big rejection. I had to actually wipe the Time Machine recovery and tell her to unlock all her files on her old system and then do the backups again. I lost 5 hours of work because my sister, for some reason, felt that she had to lock obnoxious files on her desktop. I don't know why, and she doesn't remember why she did it. So don't lock any files. No passwords will transfer over either. So if you've got things like an iTunes password or an iCloud password, you're going to need to put it back in. It'll probably save your account username information, but that's going to be it. It also won't save your Wi-Fi password. You'll have to put your Wi-Fi password in all over again. However, when you set up the system initially, you can just put the Wi-Fi password in when you first turn on the system, and that password will carry over once you do a data migration. So that's basically how to recover old data to a new Mac from an older Mac if you have an intact Time Machine, and some do's and don'ts, basically. What to do if you don't have a Time Machine? You're in trouble. You're in big trouble. Remember how I said that the Mac has FireWire calls and allows for direct data transfer using FireWire? I also said that the new computers, like the new iMacs, for example, don't use FireWire. They're using Thunderbolt and Thunderbolt 3, or as some of the PC users will know them as USB-C ports. They're not FireWire ports. If you try to get a FireWire cable and connect the FireWire cable to your Mac, there's no port. Your cable will not fit in. So what to do? Well, I'm sorry to say that I don't have a solution to this just yet. I have theories, and the math and specs back them up. But I haven't tested this yet because I wanted to do the video now. So there may be a part 3 about this. But needless to say, here is what I think might be the option. The Thunderbolt 3 ports inside the Mac are backwards compatible with Thunderbolt 2. The calls for Thunderbolt 2 are actually built into the Thunderbolt 3 ports in the new iMacs, for example. So if you pay $50 to Apple, and I have no idea why it costs $50, you can actually get a Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 adapter. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, what good's a Thunderbolt 2 adapter? Or what good's a Thunderbolt 2 port? Well, for those of you who might be using older model iMacs, probably around 2011, 2012 or so, give or take, I'm pretty certain those Thunderbolt 2 ports are already in there, so you won't need this adapter. So ignore this. But if you're using a new model iMac from like 2015, you're going to be using Thunderbolt 3 or USB-C, not Thunderbolt 2. But you're going to need to get backwards compatible with Thunderbolt 2. And as far as I know, the port does support it. So get a USB-C or Thunderbolt 3 adapter to fit a Thunderbolt 2 port. That's what you're going to need first. Those adapters are going to cost $50. And only Apple makes them. Don't trust third-party adapters. Well, you know how that is. So then you're probably saying, well, that's great, but that's only Thunderbolt 2. I'm still using FireWire. Here's the key. First off, if you're using a 2010 MacBook Pro, or even I think some 2011 MacBook Pros that use FireWire ports, those specifically are FireWire 800 ports. They're peer-to-peer ports. They are using, but those are FireWire 800 ports. I believe they're called 9-pin heads. That's the particular. So you're going to need a 9-pin FireWire 800 cable first off to basically connect it to an old MacBook. Now, you're probably wondering, well, okay, so I got FireWire on one end, and I got Thunderbolts on the other, Thunderbolt 2 specifically at this point. These aren't compatible either, and they're not. You're going to need a third adapter. I know, I was surprised too. Apple makes a Thunderbolt to FireWire adapter. Apparently, Thunderbolt 2 has the FireWire calls built into it. It's a busy port. Those two Thunderbolt 3 ports that you've got on the back of those iMacs can handle peer-to-peer transfer, direct data transfer, video output, you name it. Those ports are busy. But from what I've been told, that if you put enough adapters in there, and a couple of Mac geniuses, while they did admit they haven't even tested it themselves, not even drunk on a bet. And I said, come on, you're telling me that nobody drunk on a bet tried putting all these adapters together to see if they work? And the guy told me, no, we haven't tested it. According to the specs we have, this will work, but we haven't tested it. We can't confirm this. And I haven't seen any information online or any documentation online of people attempting this. And I'm surprised why, because as far as I know, these 2010 MacBooks were very popular, and they're all dying now. So people are going to have to buy these new systems. So, I don't know, maybe I'm breaking ground here, but my point is that you're going to need a FireWire 800 9-pin cable. You're going to need a Mac FireWire to Thunderbolt 2 adapter. And then you're going to need a Apple Mac FireWire 2 to FireWire 3 cable. Or a FireWire 2 to USB, a Thunderbolt 2 to... Even I'm mixed up at this point because of all these freaking protocols. Apple keeps changing their protocols. They keep changing the ports. The only thing that's still in there is USB. Okay, 9-pin FireWire 800 cable, first off. Both ends, 9-pin. That'll go into a FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter that's made by Apple. Those will fit. Then you need a Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 3 adapter. And you're good. According to this, you daisy chain those three cables together. You should be able to connect a FireWire port to a Thunderbolt 3 port. You're probably asking yourself, what's the point of this? Open up your old computer, your broken computer. When it's off, hold down T and start it. I don't care if the screen is busted. You should be able to enable target disk mode. From there, the Mac essentially becomes an external drive. The hope is that if I can get all these protocols to talk to each other, I can pull whatever remaining data from her old system that she didn't back up into her new system. If anybody's tried this and it works, post a comment below. The issue was that I actually thought ahead of this. That I actually told my girlfriend to get the FireWire cable. We got the right FireWire 9-pin cable. I told her to get the FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter, and it also did work. And then Apple changed the port again. So I have to get a third adapter now. A friend, I asked the unknown camera person what they thought about this. They said, would you expect any less from Apple? Who would have thought? So, don't know if it works. On paper, it should. I'll probably come back with part 3 to tell you what happened. So until next time, guys, my name is Maniac with GamingSense.net. Take care. Over and out.